Will the US debt crush the US dollar? You came here for the truth, so let me unveil that for you. In today's video, we are going to look at exactly what's been happening. I'll give you all the details you need to know. We're going to talk about Saudi Arabia. We're going to talk about the petrodollar. We're going to look at what's happening with US debt, beginning with the fact that US debt is on pace to top $56 trillion over the next 10 years. We've talked about 30 trillion, 34 trillion, and of course we know that it's continuing to go higher. That doesn't include unfunded liabilities. We already know this. It's established. Everybody knows it by now, or at least most people do. But it's all being put on the back burner saying, look, we've got everything under control. But things have really changed in recent years. Yes, we can point at new developments that have been occurring. There have been the BRICS nations, which have come together and basically said, no, we're going to do things our own way. We've watched a lot of these changes happen, but fundamentally, the United States is still the number one economy. It's still the number one currency in many ways. When we look at the total reserves globally, it's about 59%. And if you were to think about that, well, maybe I need some more context. The next one down in number two position is only a few percent. And then it's lower and lower and lower. You see, what's happening here is we're going into a very different world. And I want to talk about that now. Reports of the petrodollar system's demise are fake news. This individual is talking about what has happened recently. There was, Saudi Arabia basically coming forward and saying this. They're considering accepting yuan instead of dollars for Chinese oil sales. In fact, this was back in 2022. And now we're starting to hear a lot of it because there was this petrodollar deal. What the previous article was talking about was related to the fact that during the 70s, we started to see some big changes and that Saudi Arabia would start to sell their oil exclusively in US dollars. What that article was talking about is they're still at that point, even after this so-called deal was put through, still selling in sterling. Okay. And so perhaps that deal wasn't exactly a deal. That's what I was talking about. The point, though, is that now they are officially selling in other currencies. Are they going to sell a lot of their oil in US dollar? Absolutely. When you take a US dollar, any country in the world, even those that are heavily sanctioned by the US, that US dollar is still super valuable. So keep that in mind, okay? Well, I want to keep this in context. I want to keep it honest. You have to understand, though, things have really changed. This is coming from the IMD, and this is the World Competitiveness Ranking. I talked about this with the Finance Friday crew. Shout out to the Finance Friday. And I think it's really important to cover here as well, just briefly, though they've got the big download, but you can look at this quickly. An economy's competitiveness could not be reduced to just its GDP and productivity. Political, social, and cultural dimensions are a reality for enterprises too. Governments play a crucial role and so on. And you could look at these countries in this list. Number one being Singapore, you got Switzerland, Denmark, Ireland, and so on. UAE obviously coming way up, continuing to improve in that regard. Qatar's on this list as well. Now, the USA has moved down, and I want to show you here that they dropped out of the global competitiveness top 10. They were back in 2000, number one, moved down a few spots some years later, and now they are off the top 10. And this tells us that things have really changed. Does it mean that Singapore is the best of the best in the whole world and everyone should move to Singapore? No. But what it does tell us is that they're making some clear and obvious good decisions, going from a place that was swampland that Malaysia didn't even appear to want, and now very, very different circumstance. The world's most competitive economies, you could look at this chart as well, just to give you a look at it on a map. With that, it comes the relations that countries have developed over the years. And this is just one indicator. Countries with the most embassies globally. Number one is China. Number two is the United States. France is next on the list. And so this means that you have information that needs to flow, documents that need to flow, and they want that to be there. And so this is a good sign. The more embassies you have, of course, that's good. That's a good sign. But now what's happening is we're seeing that change occur. We are moving from west to east, split right at the Middle East. It's interesting the way that is working. And you ask the question, what's next? Well, with all of this, if the United States loses the hegemony and we become the multipolar world that we've been hearing so much about, it will have an impact. Not today, not even tomorrow. You'll watch this video, all right, and you'll wake up the next day and it's still going to be roughly the same. But slowly over time, this slow erosion is taking place. And this is part of it. As inflation rises, prepare for crime. You've heard it. You've seen it. Every city seems to have more and more and more crime. Did you see the interview with the president of El Salvador when he did the interview with Tucker Carlson? He said, how can you allow people to shoplift $1,000? And he's saying, what would incentivize these people to work if they can just steal and steal and steal? And of course, he's pointing at one thing. But you got to understand here that crime will be and continue to get worse over time. Just the shoplifting example was just one thing. The bane of retail. To prevent theft, many big chains now lock up all kinds of merchandise. And of course, it's not just things like high-ticket items, your laptops and your phones and all that. I've seen toothpaste being locked up in some of the videos. Toothpaste. Because that is a commodity that can then be resold. And it is sad to see the direction that things have head into. Looking at this is the scenario that Gen Xers are nearing retirement. About half say they need a miracle. That's what the article talks about. That people today, they're on the cusp of retirement and they just can't. There's no way. So they have to keep working. We've heard the same from people that are 65 and beyond. At the same time, however, we have this is Optimus, the Tesla robot. But robots in general, I just want to show you that it kind of shows you like their fingers, the dexterity. They're not quite at human level dexterity, but it is enough to play piano, which is pretty dexterous. And the sensitivity is going to improve. We know that over the next few years. So imagine here you are trying to retire, and there's these robots that are highly skilled robots just about to come on. Maybe it's 3 years, maybe it's 5 years, maybe it's 7 years, whatever it is. They're going to be fantastic. We're not there yet. There's no question about that. But for its function, they're going to be fantastic. Why? It's not that much different. We have these arms that move. We got Flippy the robot. It can do basic tasks. So it just needs to be a little bit more intricate, and that's what's happening. We got to compete against something that could potentially work if it was plugged in, could potentially be working 24/7, no complaints, no raises. You buy it one time, doesn't need a salary, or maybe they'll do some sort of monthly payment plan, who knows. And it's going to displace jobs, and it's going to do it very well. That is worrisome for all these people. You got crime being rampant. You got robots and automation and AI taking a lot of existing positions, white collar jobs, potentially blue collar jobs. You're looking at the changing times with the currency itself. And so we come full circle. That's what we do at the Money GPS. It takes an entire video to come back to it. But I always make my point. Will debt sink the American empire? And this has been the case all along. We've heard this. Yeah, the US is going down, the dollar's going down. Yeah. But what's happening here, the multipolar world, it basically the US can spend into infinity because it has this maximum advantage that everybody wants US dollars and people will buy their debt. It can do that because there's a lot of other countries out there that are real ugly, but we have seen the developments taking place and things have really changed over the last 5 years. I was showing the Finance Friday crew, in fact, we were talking about this basically, that tier 2 cities, not the tier 1 cities, the tier 2 cities of China are, and when we look at the infrastructure, just the infrastructure, they have outperformed, they're much better than the tier 1 cities of the West. You know that example, with the California, with the railway, they tried to build this railway. They built like a very short section of it, and it cost billions of dollars. Like that would never happen in a lot of other countries that are on the way up. Those are the countries that are making things happen. There's several of them that are like, in developing status. They got a long way to go. They got years to go, but they're going to capture more market share. Their populations are increasing. Their growth is taking place. They're consuming more because when you go into a mature or advanced economy, you could see this a lot with Europe. The population is mature, the whole economy is mature, like everything is maturing. The growth slows down. There's not as much consumption coming from there. They've already got a lot of their land built up. There's all that has happened, and they've got so much red tape from all of that. You're going to lose out to these other new countries that are growing. I shouldn't say new countries, but growing countries. And that is what's happening here. And the worry is that people are unprepared. Number one, get your skills up. Make sure that your skills are being upgraded as best you can. Okay. You can do that through things like Class Central. I talk about that all the time. I've got Compass on my website, totally free financial education. That at least it's like a foundation, super simple, totally free, no email, no nothing. If you want to go into the in-depth, the thing that I would tell, like if a friend was asking me, what should I do? You should be starting an online business. There's no question about that. If you want to know more about the financial stuff, I've got that help as well. But if you want the online business, I think that's the way to go right now, because if you got to move, you got to be geographically diversified. You got to have money coming from different places, and you've got to have a business that can operate, that doesn't depend on where you are at any given time. I teach people, it's at themoneygps.com/live. You got to get on there. I want to see you there. And the people that are in that group are fantastic. It's a small Zoom that we have each and every weekend. If you want more information, there's a link at the top of the description of this video. It looks just like this, themoneygps.com/live. I want to see you there. And as always, come back every Monday, and we can do these videos. I can give as much information as I possibly can. I'll see you next week. Take care.